Back to the never-ending Daily Wire campaign coverage. This was supposed to be over on election night, and it seems like we're all here again. Happy Groundhog Day, everybody. We do have some updates, and the reason I feel it's very important to go live right now is there is a lot of disinformation going around the internet and a lot of fake news. So just the facts, here are the updates. Many mainstream, I guess you can't really call it mainstream anymore, many legacy and establishment media outlets have called the election for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. This began this morning at, I believe, 11:24 a.m. with none other than CNN, of course. NBC, ABC, MSNBC all soon followed that, and then about 2 or 3 minutes later, the Associated Press also followed that. Fox News followed as well. Fox News, you'll recall, was, I think, the only media outlet to call Arizona for Joe Biden on election night, even though then that decision was challenged. Anyway, these legacy media outlets have called the election for Joe Biden. That does not mean that the election is over, because the Constitution does not grant the legacy media the power to determine presidential elections. The election will be over, in this case, when a winner is certified, and a winner almost certainly will not be certified before this goes to the courts, and of course the Trump campaign has not conceded. So we have a statement here from President Trump. This statement probably won't be read on legacy media, so I guess we'll just have to do it here. Statement from President Donald J. Trump. We all know why Joe Biden is rushing to falsely pose as the winner and why his media allies are trying so hard to help him. They don't want the truth to be exposed. The simple fact is this election is far from over. Joe Biden has not been certified as the winner of any states, let alone any of the highly contested states headed for mandatory recounts, or states where our campaign has valid and legitimate legal challenges that could determine the ultimate victor. In Pennsylvania, for example, our legal observers were not permitted meaningful access to watch the counting process. Legal votes decide who is president, not the news media. Beginning Monday, our campaign will start prosecuting our case in court to ensure election laws are fully upheld and the rightful winner is seated. The American people are entitled to an honest election. That means counting all legal ballots and not counting any illegal ballots. This is the only way to ensure the public has full confidence in our election. It remains shocking that the Biden campaign refuses to agree with this basic principle and wants ballots counted even if they are fraudulent, manufactured, or cast by ineligible or deceased voters. Only a party engaged in wrongdoing would unlawfully keep observers out of the courtroom. Or out of the count room, rather. Everyone's going to the courtroom. And then fight in court to block their access. So what is Biden hiding? I will not rest until the American people have the honest vote count they deserve and that democracy demands. That is the statement from President Trump. There was another statement given immediately after the legacy media called the election. Each campaign during elections is permitted to have poll watchers to make sure that shenanigans don't go on, because historically shenanigans do go on at polling places, in particular in Philadelphia. This is true of every election. Unfortunately, because of the unprecedented use of widespread unsolicited mail-in ballots, that process was much, much more difficult this year. And in certain locations, notably in Philadelphia, election officials in Democratic-run areas would not permit Republican poll watchers to look at the vote and verify that these votes were legitimate. So then the Trump campaign went to the courts to make sure that they would have their right to look at the count. The courts granted them that right. It is their legal right to watch the count. Even then, Rudy Giuliani and the other poll workers allege they were not given that right to watch the vote. So, as President Trump noted, there may well be mandatory recounts in certain places, but certainly the one thing we are guaranteed here is that this will be litigated. You know, just personally, I was asked in an interview about a month ago how I thought this is the winner of the election. He may well be the winner of the election at some point, but right now that is not the case. Likewise, it is not the case that Donald Trump is the winner of the election. He may well be the winner of the election. We just don't know right now. We will not know who the winner of the presidential election is until the votes are certified. And the votes will not be certified until they have passed through a process of litigation. So once again, this is going to go to the courts. There is going to be a media narrative that comes out that Joe Biden is the winner of the election. Already you're seeing many more liberal and establishment Republicans conceding the election on President Trump's behalf. It does not matter if those establishment and liberal Republicans concede the election on President Trump's behalf. There is no legal way to that whatsoever. Mitt Romney, perhaps expectedly, came out and congratulated Joe Biden and is giving the election, if he would be able to the Democrats. President Trump is not doing that, and therefore the election is not over. We will have to wait and see. A lot of people some of us remember the year 2000. There was a dispute about the ballots in Florida with, frankly, less serious allegations than some of the disputes that are going on, notably in Pennsylvania, but in other places too right now. That election process lasted for 38 days in the year 2000. Al Gore challenged the vote in Florida. There were recounts. There were more recounts. It went to the Florida Supreme Court, then it went up to the United States Supreme Court. There were a couple of decisions there. Ultimately, the recount was stopped, but that was a 38-day process. By my count, we are right now in day 4 of this process. Right? The election was Tuesday night. You have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Now we're on Saturday after this process. This is most likely going to go on for a long time. There are reports that President Trump was playing golf while the media were making this decision. And I think that tone actually is important to recognize for how the campaigns are looking at the situation. Joe Biden has accepted this, granting that he is the president from the media. Kamala Harris has already changed her handle on Instagram and said that she is the vice president-elect. But it's important to remember irregularities and even more difficult to prove fraud in court. So we cannot conclude right now that there is guaranteed 100% we've got the hard evidence of fraud. We've got a lot of circumstantial evidence of big issues at the polling places. And probably most egregiously, the decision of the Philadelphia election officials not to permit the legally mandated Republican poll watchers even after a court order. That is very strong evidence that something stinks in the city of Philadelphia. And of course, those votes will go on for a long time. And then there are the questions about the process itself. We have election day for a reason in this country, because there are already always shenanigans. Why did the votes take so long? Why on election night in certain hotly contested precincts did vote counting just stop? In some places it stopped for days. Well, why did that happen? There's no explanation yet. Democrats will have to provide an explanation, and the Trump campaign will have to prosecute their case if they want this to be to drag on, and if they want to hold on to the presidency. As of now, there is nothing new on the political front. There's nothing new on the campaign front. The only thing that has changed is on the media front. The legacy media have called the election. I'm no constitutional scholar, but I don't see anywhere that the U.S. Constitution grants the legacy left-wing media the right to call presidential elections. It was funny, when I woke up this morning, I think a lot of us did, and we saw the update. The big update was the Associated Press, more than CNN or NBC or MSNBC. And the Associated Press, the headline came in, the Associated Press calls the election, as though the Associated Press were politically neutral, as though the Associated Press were objective reporters. The Associated Press style book, you'll recall, now caution anything when looking at these results. I would encourage patience. Patience is a virtue. That is what the Trump campaign is pushing out. The media are rushing to call this thing to create a narrative that, if there were a significant challenge in court, could not overcome that narrative. I think that's what's happening on the political media front right now. But the media don't get to call the elections. This process will continue. We will continue to provide you coverage objectively. Obviously, we at the Daily Wire own our point of view. We are conservative here, but that does not mean that we are dishonest. Quite the opposite, actually. I think it is the legacy media which is quite dishonest, because they don't own their political biases, they don't own their point of view, and in this case, they are explicitly lying about this election. The election is not over. We will continue to cover this, whether it turns out that Joe Biden is named the president, whether it turns out that Joe Biden wins this election and the transition begins and then he's inaugurated in January. We'll cover that honestly. If it turns out that there is fraud, if that is the case that is proven in court, and President Trump wins this election, we will cover that honestly as well. The